Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I finished this video. Today's Thursday, October 24th. This won't be up till Saturday, but I'm getting this stuff done ahead of time. So my friend texted me, my basketball buddy. So someone I was friends in, I guess the 80s, must have been the 80s, the late 80s, maybe the early 90s. Someone who we had a YMCA basketball team, and we played intramural basketball for our, in college. That I ended up my second attempt and failed attempt at college. I failed twice, and the third time I got my degree because I was under functioning. Anyways, he's the only person from my past that I talk to semi-regularly. He calls me from time to time. He lets me know how my old friends are doing. But a few of my friends listen to my videos. And he said this. So the last time he texted me was April 4th, 2021. And so that must have been about when we talked. So it's been 3 years since we've talked. Maybe there's been a time in between that where he just called me out of the blue. But nobody texts me. Like, it's my wife and, sometimes my son. And then, dentist appointments and shit like that. And so he said, just watch your apocalyptic pole reversal. Great stuff from the beginning to the Trump stuff. Laughed hard, bro. And I said, thanks, bro. How are you doing? And then when I wrote that, I'm like, do we used to call each other bro? Did me and my friends call each other bro? Like, I have no memory. I don't know. Like, I couldn't remember how we used to interact, right? And then he said that, I asked about his kids, and he said he was talking to one of our mutual friend, Sean. I talked this kind of politics with Sean all the time, and when that happened to have time to listen to this, exactly what we were talking about, but I had not seen it yet. Don't have a lot of time to watch your videos, but caught this one. Had to text you because you had me laughing on the ground like the old days when you commented they tried to kill Trump a fourth time with heat, and he gives some laughy faces. And then we went back and forth and talked about this, and they often have a similar perspective, and he remembered me being like this years and years ago, which of course, like I guess I was, like I don't even know, like it's just I'm so it's like a past life, right? But we have some clarity here, and I think it's part of it. For me, it's just who I am as a person and the things I've been through, and being dyslexic, and the reason I'm able to excel here on this YouTube channel specifically, it's seeing different things and looking at it a different way, and the jokes and things, and growing up in a family in that area, sort of with that kind of humor, the mocking and the whatever it is. But part of it's generational. And I was thinking about this because we texted for a while. And I've never done this before where you're just texting back and forth. I was watching a basketball game that sucked, and I was waiting for my wife so we could watch some TV. It was getting late. I was getting tired. And I'm like, I never do this. Like, I don't text back and forth. But it occurred to me that, the generation, I'm like just at the cusp of generation. I think of myself as a Generation Xer. My friend, I think, was 1 year behind me in high school, so he was 1 year younger. So he's definitely a Generation Xer. But the people I hung out with were Generation Xers, not boomers. And the boomers were, they had a whole movement, the hippie movement. They were involved in epic change. And my generation was more about, like, being realistic and practical. And then, of course, the generations that preceded have all, we saw through the hippie bullshit, like my generation. And some of my generation their parents were hippies, right? Because some of the, hippies, got married younger and had kids. And the whole hippie bullshit, there was good things about the hippie generation, but they have completely turned into what we now is the power structure, right? The liberal power structure. They grew up in conservatism, and they did some good things in getting rid of the bullshit conservatism, right? And those of us who grew up at that time, we saw the way the conservatives were controlling things, and a lot of it was bad. And a lot of it wasn't good for the majority of people, and it pissed the liberals off. It pissed, people in the gay community and liberals off, and people, of color and things. They felt, that they were being prejudiced against. And that suppression of those people, their point of view, either in movies and TV shows, have led to what you have now. Whenever you use force to push something away, instead of, you might not be something good, but you have to, if you do what the conservatives did and you suppress it, it incubates and then grows power and it comes back like a cancer. And, the same stuff's starting to happen now with Trumpers and conservatives where their voices are being suppressed, and, it comes back around. Whenever you use force, there's a counterforce. And that's one of the spiritual teachings, that using force, God doesn't use force because love is the forceless force, right? The Pranhuiti, the transmission that's available in the meditation I do. And that whenever you use force, there's a counterforce, right? There's a reaction to the force being used. And so those of us who grew up seeing that, right? Because lots of you are too young to understand those times. But the differences that we've seen, particularly my generation, certainly the boomer generation as well, the differences that we have seen, that we've gone through the 60s. I was just a little kid when I was in the 60s, but I understand the 60s because I grew up in the 70s. And seeing the transformation that's occurred specifically since the computer age, but not buying into this "Make America Great Again" bullshit, because it wasn't great for everybody. Having a very limited view, where conservatives felt like they were just ruling things and they were pummeling the liberals. I mean, that's what happened in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and, even before that. That battle between the hippies, that the hippies lost then but are now winning now. And so being able to see that and see the changes that we've lived through, right? And our generation's in this very specific period of time, Generation Xers, because we know what it was like before, and we know some of the bad shit that was there, like the ones that are conscious, and we know how much the extremism has entered in on the left in ways that people growing up at this time, all the people who are the younger generation of people, 30 and younger, that they grew up during this is the last 25 years of computer time, the millennials, and, even into the 90s when computers became a thing. Like, it's the change before and after computers, there's no comparing it. And the changes that have happened year to year, decade to decade in our lifestyle. I saw a video where Dr. Dre and Eminem were lamenting and whining about being on a Limp Bizkit. It was right before Eminem endorsed Obama, or introduced Obama, endorsed Kamala, the day before, or that day. And this video came out and said, they talk about their being on a Limp Bizkit, they were in a music video. And they both said they regretted it. And Dr. Dre got pissy about it. And the interviewer said, why? And she said, well, Fred Durst doesn't believe in the same, some of the things he believes in lately, I'm not down with. And she says, is it about Napster? That's how old this thing was, right? Napster was the original digitalization of, turning regular music into digital music. And they were sharing music for free, and artists and record labels were getting cut out, right? And of course, it's turned it into actually something great. This was a time where you had to buy CDs, right? And, these kind of things. And when things went digital and you could download music, it's revolutionized the record industry. But these two dopes were whining because they weren't getting paid for their music in the initial parts of it. But of course, the record companies set in and they found out ways to create licensure and things, so that Napster, was sued or whatever happened there. And, but and I was thinking, that's like, these guys were, it's 2000s, right? I mean, it's only 24 years ago they were whining about Napster. And, the changes that have happened since then, and now all these independent artists that have made use of not needing to go to record companies just by making videos and independent music and selling it directly to the people, or through, iTunes and these other services. And it's changed the whole thing, right? The music industry has taken advantage of people for years. And now artists are actually, it's better for artists, right? But they were whining about it then. But either way, the changes that have occurred and all these, the technological changes and the social changes that have happened are, astounding. And we've seen the degradation. We see, you know, the people who are a little bit older, we can see with each of these changes the level of degradation that's happened. And of course, most recently, people are walking around like zombies, right? And so, you know, I thought that that was something I'd add here to the beginning of the video. The idiocracy aspect of this thing, the dumbing down of people, because we used to live real lives. And, you know, we were maybe Generation Y, maybe the last generation to do that, Generation X and Y, before the computer age, where so much of our life was in the real world. All of our life was in the real world. And to see that change so dramatically and then have kids who grow up with that. I mean, my kids grew up on a farm, so they didn't, you know, they missed out on some of that until they were, you know, in their teens, where they were able to be more on the computer and things like this. Just, you know, because they had to, you know, be like, they had to understand their generation, right? But to see these effects, we know that it's going in the wrong direction in ways that if you didn't live through these other periods of time, you'd never know. You never know how much different it was and how much better it was. Like, life was just more enjoyable and people were healthier and, I mean, just, you know, every possible way. Not that it was great, because it wasn't, but it was better than it is now, and things are going in the wrong direction. And so we know there's no real solution, that no matter what people say, they're not going to save you, right? And I say this at the end of this video because Kamala Harris had an epic failure, which I'll get to at the end of the video you're about to see, with CNN Town Hall. Like, it's epic, her failure. And, you know, I was going to say this in my next video, but I'm going to do it here, and it's going to be part of the title. But, you know, if you see the way that we've all gone in the wrong direction, and you see the way that, you know, society has gone in the wrong direction, you know, and all these people are hoping that they can be saved by Kamala Harris or Trump or something, you know, that America can be saved. I mean, that's what's on the table. Most people see that the apocalypse is possible, that there could be a collapse. I mean, even if they don't want to acknowledge it, they're worried about it, right? Because the candidates are openly talking about it, and there's real World War III shit happening, like Korea and Russia, which I'll get into, you know, also in this video. And then the depravity and the idiocracy that's set in and all the bad stuff, right? And so if you think you deserve to be saved and the country deserves to be saved, why? Like, why should we be saved? Why should America be saved? You know, why should something or somebody, why should God save America? Why should, you know, why do we deserve that? Like, what have we done to deserve to be saved, right? Because, you know, we're addicted to a lifestyle that's in a system that's demonic, that somehow it should be too big to fail because we couldn't live without it, right? Like, you know, why do we deserve? Well, you know, why do you think you deserve to be saved? Like, you're voting, you know, basted ridiculous faith and hope in people that show you every day that they're pieces of shit, right? They're worthless pieces of shit. And so why do you deserve to be saved? Why does America deserve to be saved when there's not that much worth saving in terms of anything, you know, when we're going in the wrong direction in a system that was never good? And certainly we're not, you know, we're turning the environment, whether, you know, you believe in global warming or not, or any of those types of, you know, bullshit environmental policies. But we are polluting the world in all kinds of various ways. We're destroying habitat. We're destroying, you know, other forms of life on the planet and each other. And, you know, people just suck right now. I mean, we suck, you know, collectively and individually. And so when you suck that bad, as people do, and there are good people and there are people, you know, all that bullshit, right? But collectively, we're definitely going in the wrong direction. Like, each individual is getting more addicted and is weaker and more entitled. And generationally, we're failing the next generation by leaving them in a worse situation than we're in. We're all making the world a worse place, individually and collectively, in various ways, not just physically, but also spiritually. And so, you know, why should we be saved? Like, and where is that savior going to come from? Like, how are you going to produce a savior when, like, people are sucking so bad? Like, where is that savior going to be generated from, right? And if you know anything about any religion, even just Christianity, you think Jesus would say, oh, I'm here to save America? If Jesus was born right now, you think he would be about saving America or be about destroying America? Like, he destroyed the Pharisees, you know, the money changers that were in the temple. You think he'd be about saving America or about destroying the power structure that is taking everybody in the wrong direction. Every spiritual person, every sane would be about saying, hey, this is bullshit. You guys can't live this way anymore. We have to do something different. This is going to be radical, wild-scale changes because you guys are going in the wrong direction. You're disconnected from God, and you better, find some way to change all that, and then from that you can change society into a better system based in the divine laws and principles, right? A world with spirituality as its base, where your interconnection to God guides you to build a society that is a reflection of the divine order of things, which we're a new world order, which is anything from, everything away from God, right? Going against the divine principles. And so, these are the things that are important to understand, that, the system shouldn't be saved, and it can't be saved, and it'll be better for everyone when it collapses. All right, so here's the video I've already made. Greetings, brothers and sisters. Okay, just a brief introduction. I want to get into some different kind of stuff here, and then get back to the idiocracy of it all. Got a hilarious Gwen Walls update. Unfortunately, they're shutting Gwen down. I'll talk about that. I just want to say this about politics, and it's not just politics. It's everything in terms of the way we've been indoctrinated to our worldview, and that is that any problem that is presented to us is the solution. You're supposed to look for it within the beast itself, and in the binary way that you've been trained to think about things. If you see a problem with Donald Trump, then Kamala Harris has to be the solution. And if you see a problem with the Democrats and Kamala Harris and the whole democratic system, then Trump has to be the solution. You understand this? I see this in my comment section all the time. People can't rise above their indoctrination to this idea that the beast itself is the only answer or solution to the problem, right? Like, it has to come from all the mainstream beastly narratives, all the, power organizations. There's this narrow bandwidth of reality and of possibility that they give to you in the mainstream story. And there's fringes on either side, right? And so to people who are fringe on the right, there's certain people that you can see. Fringe on the left, there's certain people. But the left and the right aren't really the fringes. The extreme left and the extreme right people are exactly the same. They have different beliefs, but they act exactly the same. They're both annoying. They both suck. They're both radicalized, and they both think that they know more than anybody else. They know more than the normal lefty and the normal righty. They know more than the average person, and they're arrogant about it. It's just like the whole fringe of the people who are on the fringe, and then they come into the truth community, and they tell you what's up, and they've just been there for 10 minutes, and they don't know what the F they're talking about, and they're just annoying and obnoxious. The cubies and the woke people and all these people, they're all the same. Their personalities, despite their demographics and their beliefs being completely different, they're exactly the same guy. They're the same dude. They're exactly the same people. They're that guy, right? And they're completely unaware of it, and they think they've cracked the code, they've penetrated to something higher, and they're actually kind of the lowest of the low, because they're part of the mainstream system. They're still sheeple, but they're angry and unproductive. Like sheeple at least producing things. Sheeple at least, are part of the system and working for the system. If you're going to be in the system that way, you might as well just go for it and, buy into the system. But you have these people on the fringe right and the fringe left who don't buy into the system, but they don't break free. Their mental faculties don't break free from the system. They're still just, dabbling in the mainstream narratives. They're just extreme in their position in terms of the narrow bandwidth. And they don't produce anything. They're just negative, like dragging other people down with them and complaining and bitching and, all these things. And so they're not, they haven't evolved to something else. They're not truthers. They're not breaking free from the mental constraints of the mainstream narrative. And so all these people who are in this, and there's so many truthers now that are are going back to this because they've embraced Trump in some stupid way. When Trump has showed them over and over again, he's like he's just a shill for the himself more than anybody else, and then of course for the power brokers that control and handle him, right? And it's because people have these proclivities, these they've been trained to, I'm not what the right word is. Proclivity is kind of the right word, but then there's, these they're compelled, they have compulsions because they've been indoctrinated, and you're like, well, I have to pick somebody. I have to vote, don't I? I have to vote. Don't I have to vote? I've been trained my whole life. I have to vote. Well, I got to vote. So who am I going to vote for? One person's at least got to be a little bit better than the other person, right? And so they, focus on the solutions that are given to them in the system, and they never break free. And it's in the medical model, and they'll go back, right? They'll flirt with alternative type stuff, but then they'll go back to the they'll get the the bloop or whatever it is. They'll run back to the system as soon as things get scary, and that is their downfall. Because if you're going to be a sheeple, be a sheeple, right? Embrace it. Just go take the blue pill, go back into the matrix. I mean, I don't advise anybody, but that's what you might as well enjoy the sheepleness, the blissful ignorance, and get into the whole thing, right? But if you're going to flirt with the truth and come across this idea that the system is, a web of lies and a deception, then you got to go all the way. At least you have to go farther than you got to go out of the range of the available narratives that are given to you by the mainstream media. You have to evolve way past that. But that isn't taking the mainstream narrative and saying, and this is a huge pitfall for truthers. They take the mainstream media narrative and they just reverse it and say whatever they're saying, I'm going to believe the exact opposite. Oh, they're going to say Trump's bad? Well, he must be good. Oh, they're going to say Trump is a criminal? Well, he must be a saint. People just reverse what they're seeing, right? There's no nuance. They just take whatever's being presented to them and they just believe the exact opposite. You're still letting the beast dictate what you believe. They're dictating the terms and the choices that you have. And so instead of doing that, you can say, I'm just going to look outside the whole thing. You have the access to the internet and these other ways of viewing things, right? And you have to understand that every part of the system, your religion, which most people can't get free from, their religious indoctrination, and then your social systems and all these things have been constructed, even the things that you like, are part of that illusion. In fact, the things that you like are more dangerous to you than the things you don't like, because those are the ones that keep you enslaved, right? And so if you want to break free, you break free. Like you just say, I'm not going to listen to any of this shit that they're saying. I'm just going to, find a new way of viewing this and a whole new way of going about it. That's why I talk about finding the divinity within and all these other things, right? And so I see this way too much now with the idiocracy. I mean, I just covered this in my last two videos, and I'll cover it here more today, that you have to somehow find this, your solution within the beast that you're rejecting the whole narrative, the show as as an illusion, and yet letting it dictate what you believe and how you see the world and what you hope for. The hope is not in the beast. The beast isn't producing any real hope. The hope is for a human being that can live outside of the indoctrination and the slavery caused by the beast. And it might not be us because we're too far gone. We're too dependent on this beastly system. But it could be us in a future existence, and it could be our children and grandchildren could break free from this, abomination, or just will have to because it's no longer there. When it collapses, and then what do? Then all this stuff that's in the beast no longer matters. When something dies, the energy leaves. Like you'll see this, you'll really have some anger and hatred towards a loved one or relative, and then they die and it just dissipates because you're hating a memory, like the person's gone, right? You're hating their soul. What are you holding on to? And it's not even just something that you choose, it just disappears, right? Your negative feelings for somebody, even if they were abusive, a mean parent, you necessarily aren't gonna. I mean, you might love them just because you love them because that's just the way it is, but you might not ever like them, and you might not ever, respect what they did to you or how they lived their lives. But the anger towards them just dissipates, right? It's the same when a system collapses. You'll lament and you'll think about all the bad things of the system, and there'll be some, when the beastly system collapses and people are desperate, they'll be angry at it, and they'll be, some, why did you, you made these promises to me and you didn't keep the promises when the beast collapses. But, at the end of it, you have to live your life and you have to focus on what's there, what's happening, what's present. And you can't dwell in the past, so you have to move on and move forward, and that's what people will do. And so the beastly system is the illusion of its an inevitable, its non-inevitable collapse, that it's too big to fail, keeps people boxed into it, thinking that it's all powerful, and it's simply not. It's like any other system of power. It's there for a while and it disappears. And when it disappears, people forget about it and they move forward. All right, let me get into this other stuff, and we'll come back to this maybe as I work my way through the video. Okay, so this is just a Reddit post, but I understand this on a spiritual level, that this is happening. That, where there's astrology and Vedic astrology, I'm a little bit more familiar with Vedic astrology, but there's a way to read the stars and, the effects of the sort of, I don't know, I guess space or whatever it is. And again, no flat earth bullshit here, because but there's, a science here to predict events. And when certain things line up or don't line up, and there's some sort of anomalies, things that happen that are different with the, the planets. And when you go into new paradigms and new yugas, there's these yugas. We're now in the Kali Yuga, which is the worst one. And there's some cosmic things that happen that open up a new paradigm shift. And so, again, this is just a Reddit post, but I have no way to validate this, but I believe this is happening. Something like this. Maybe not this, but something like this. All the major bodies of the solar system are changing rapidly, but nobody's talking about it. We are seeing rapid observational climate changes occurring on almost every single planet. Pluto's atmosphere has recently collapsed. Neptune's storms have suddenly begun rotating backwards. Uranus's polar regions have been visibly flaring. Jupiter has recently experienced 700-degree temperature impulse originating from its north pole and a great fading red spot. Mars is suddenly displaying seismic activity. Our own polar regions have been drastically recently. The amount of volcanic activity we're seeing all the time are high. Of course, when the aurora borealis, which people are now saying, my commenters are saying they're seeing in different locations at different times in the United States, this, I've talked about this in a recent video, the poles reversing themselves, and that you would see the aurora borealis other than in the North Pole. And so for my entire lifetime, that was never possible. There was never any, oh, wow, we can see it somewhere else, right? Because it takes the fluctuation of the magnetic poles. The aurora borealis happens at the North Pole, at the pole regions. And so you're not going to see it anywhere else unless the magnetic poles are shifting, which means that there's fluctuation in the magnetic poles, and there's a 200,000 year period between the poles reversing themselves, right? And so there's things going on, and you can see it in the world. There's chaos, and people are coming undone, and the system and all of it, right? Everything that's happening. And we'll go through some of those changes. I mean, I could all look into these things, and none of these things are all that. Venus's planetary winds have recently increased their velocities by 33% in the last 20 years. Interesting number. So again, I could find out if there's articles about that, but then do I believe the articles? But, I know that this stuff is going on because we're living in a time of drastic change, which I've covered extensively in many of my videos. Okay, so along those same lines, a giant ancient meteorite may have helped life on Earth thrive. It was 4 times the size of Mount Everest, unleashed a tsunami bigger than any in known human history, and boiled the oceans. But an ancient meteor may have also nurtured life on Earth after smashing into it, scientists have discovered. The meteorite S2 was discovered in 2014. It hit the planet about 3.26 billion years ago is estimated to have been up to 200 times larger than the space rock that later killed the dinosaurs. And so these rocks, sometimes they give us, sometimes they take it away. It said here that, where is it? The research team traveled to the field in the Greenstone Belt in South Africa. And it said here, the giant meteorite caused a tsunami to sweep across the planet. The scientists found heat from the impact caused the topmost layer of the ocean to boil, while also heating the atmosphere. The rock evidence showing the tsunami churns up nutrients such as iron and phosphorus. They all figured this out even though it happened 3.6 billion years ago. But they can't find civilizations older than 5,000 years. Additionally, there was a partial ocean evaporation in the darkness that likely harmed shallow water photosynthetic microbes in the short term. Life in the deeper oceans was less affected, the scientists found. So it did all this stuff that created more life. And so the meteorite that's about to hit in the next couple of years, just think about that when it's wiping the rest of us out, that it's, going to have dividends down the road. Like there's a silver lining for these extinction level events that are going to unfold. Okay, so then this happened here. It says North Korea troops have been sent to Russia, U.S. confirms. And so these Russian troops, North Korea troops, have been sent to Russia. The comments by Defense Department Lloyd Austin, Defense Secretary, were Washington's first confirmation of major development that has seen South Korea and the Ukraine sound the alarm in recent days. They have sent troops to Russia. The United States said Wednesday its first public confirmation of a move that has rattled Western allies and could mark a major escalation of Moscow's war with the Ukraine. They have lots of soldiers in North Korea. They're also training with the Russian soldiers. And the Russians have to be giving them something, and there's some kind of an alliance, and maybe there is now developing a secret plan to take America down, right? Russia friendship with North Korea may have backfired. U.S. as evidence shows that North Korea has troops in Russia for Ukraine war. And so this is not good. Like, and it's, maybe it's great. I don't know, like whatever you want to look at it, in terms of the end of this demonic system. But World War III is coming. You can see it, and it should be there for everyone to see and feel, and, the end of stuff, right? That things are unraveling and going south, and there's just too much debt, there's too much moral decay. It's just, beyond what the people call the elite, or what I call the controllers, have control over. Whether they want to do this or not, this is coming from a divine plan to eradicate this demonic system from the planet. And it's not that far off. With the next couple of years, you're going to see this, maybe even sooner. What's going on with Israel, what's going on in the Ukraine, what's going on with these countries. There's going to be World War III. And America is in no shape to fight Russia, North Korea, and China, which would be the alliance that would, take America down. And we don't really have any allies like that, right? Like the North Korea, Russia, and China are like 2, 3, and 4 in terms of the militaries around the world, right? And of course, Iran has a very strong military as well. But the countries that America has on their side, the European countries, they just don't want to fight anymore. Like they want America to be their military. That was part of the whole deal for America to have the world reserve currency. And so Americans don't want to fight. Like we've just lost which is good. We're growing up maybe a little bit, but it's kind of at a bad time. Speaking of not growing up at the right time.
2024 case study of the long-term effects of young love is
Young love.
Really a snapshot of my mental state currently when it comes to trying to be a human and relate with people in the digital age that we live in. The mental landscapes of people are changing, and the psychology of people is changing. Honestly,
Jaden Smith is the best.
I just wanted to make it because I'm sad, and it's my sadness that connects me with my community and my fans. I'm hoping that I can leave enough information behind for psychologists of the future to look back and be like, man, what was really wrong with this guy? Like,
psychologists today aren't equipped to deal with this motherfucker, right? Psychologists today, Well, maybe it's your parents. Like, I think it's your parents. You know, your dad is and mom are both like maybe bisexual or gay or something, and they have a fake beard marriage, and you know all the things that go with it, right? And so maybe it's that stuff, right? Maybe that's the stuff that's happening. I talked about this in my last video. My computer is now showing more and more. There's something wrong with like the video card or whatever, which sucks because this computer's only 6 months old. I'm gonna have to get it fixed sooner than later. But anyways, you guys can't see it, but it's right here. But you know, maybe it's your parents and the fact you grew up in Hollywood and you know all the other bullshit and the fact that you somehow became a rapper and an actor when really you don't have talent for either one.
There's some serious stuff that's wrong with him. Like, what is it?
Why is it important to be able to cry?
I just think that you'll just fill up with water if you don't. I think people will just fill up with water and drown from the inside.
Exactly. If you don't cry and release some of the water that you've been drinking, there's no other way for water to leave your body than crying, then you'll just drown inside.
I think that it's important to cry just to get water out of your body.
Exactly. There's no other way to get water out of your body. There's nothing that comes to mind of a way a liquid leaves your body. Boom. This guy is sad, and he's trying to do these things with this camouflage hat and these little, whatever these things are, and do some kind of work for the future for people to figure out how effed up he was, because there isn't enough information now about psychological deprivation and Hollywood celebrity children out there to understand why he feels depressed. Google bets big on mini nuclear reactors to feed its AI demands. Google says the agreement could unlock the potential of AI for everyone. Google is officially putting its weight behind advancing mini nuclear reactions. Remember when I talked about mini nukes in terms of mini handheld nukes and in terms of some big event that happened, I don't know, in 2001, about, this time of year, a little bit earlier, September. Anyways, mini nuclear reactors, an effort to produce new clean to meeting growing, new clean energy, I think they mean, to meet growing AI energy demands. On Tuesday, the company announced an agreement with California-based small nuclear reactor startup Kairos Power to commission the development of 6 or 7 reactors that could add 5,000 megawatts of clean energy to the U.S. electrical grid within the next decade. Good for you, Google. Your AI, it's so important. We need to put some more nuclear reactors out there, so when the EMP solar flare hits and shorts out of the electrical grid and there's no way to cool those reactors, that we have all these little mini nuclear bombs. There's this Matt Stein's 1,000 Chernobyls book about such a possibility, some guy scientist from MIT. One of my viewers sent me this. Underpaid flight attendants turn to stripping, eating passengers' leftovers. Actual food, not it's not some kind of sexual act. They can't survive. They also are asked to do prostitute-like behavior by passengers. And so that tells you everything you need to know about the airline industry, because that's what it's like to be a flight attendant now. You don't get enough money to eat, and you have to strip to survive. Okay, so I briefly want to talk about DMSO. This is a 60 Minutes report from years ago. DMSO, Dr. Jacob on 60 Minutes. My wife found this. I don't know how she did. Marcola might have recommended it. Again, I don't recommend healthcare things. I'm not a doctor. I don't think I'm a healer. And I know people might say otherwise. I don't know. But certainly medically, I'm not into it. And I only do enough research to choose the decisions I have to make about my own health. My wife did most of the research about this and told me about it. And we've both been doing it for a week, and we've both had some pretty good results. Again, I'm not recommending anything. I don't know how something works for you. And certainly YouTube's all their stuff about medical misinformation. So I'm not going to make any kind of claims about it, but we've both benefited from it. And, there's a lot of stuff out there, alternative medicine-wise, and people will say, it's a miracle cure, it does this or that and the other thing. And usually, almost never, does it live up to the hype. In fact, I've never had anything live up to the hype. I've found things that are somewhat better and make some things good. And so, that's always positive. I don't think I've ever been hurt by anything New Age that I've tried, alternative medicine that I've tried. But a lot of it doesn't live up to the hype or the claim. But in terms of the last week or so, we've benefited from this. There's another video here. This woman here, her name is, here she is, Amanda Volmar. She's really into DSMO. She's written a little book about it. And so those of you who are interested, you can figure this out for yourself. Again, I'm not recommending it. It's up to you to figure out if this is something that you're interested or not. I'm just relaying the information as I always do when I come across something that I think might be positive. Before we get to Gwen Walls, I just want to add this. Some things work for some people and they don't work for others. And there's always, possible side effects and issues to something. And so, there are things that work better for other people. Sometimes you need nutrients that other people don't need, or some things that you might have allergic reaction to. And so that's why I don't really, I don't know enough about any of these things, and I don't really care about it. I just want the bare minimum effort on my part to figure out what I need to do to stay healthy enough to complete whatever I got to complete in terms of my mission here on this planet, and then move on to something hopefully better. And so there's that. So if you search Gwen Walls, today, Wednesday, October 23rd, I just finished the video and put it up about, Obama coming in and Eminem and, introducing Obama and all that other stuff that I showed you. Post the, I'm 2 videos away from Trump showing up at McDonald's. So Gwen Walls' Tuesday visit to Maine canceled. A trip to Maine by Gwen Walls, the wife of Democratic presidential candidate Tim Walz, was canceled. The Harris, let me show you the rest of that here. There she is there in all her glory. The Harris campaign did not give a reason. We know what the reason is. She's batshit crazy, right? And so how crazy do you have to be that they would rather roll out Eminem as a champion of women and women's rights and whatever teacher stuff she talks about, that they would prefer to focus on Eminem introducing Obama. Morning Joe showed the Eminem Obama thing. I'll show you that if they post it on the internet. But I saw this on the, regular news this morning. TV, on TV. But if they post it on YouTube, I'll try to find that and show you that later. But they're pushing out Eminem and how great it is for him to be a part of the Harris Walls campaign. And Gwen Walls, who's this, supposed to be a teacher, they're reining her in because she's so freaking weird and crazy, right? Like, this is, I'll try to find more of her because she was great. Like, you can't get enough of this. I like weird, especially in terms of entertainment and what I do here on the show. But she's really weird and really not normal, and I don't like normal. Like, I don't even know what normal is anymore because it's completely redefined, so maybe she is normal. But she's not normal enough for them to roll her out in Maine. And how bad is she that Maine is like one of the strangest, Maine is known for a lot of not great things. It's kind of rural, and I mean, it's one of the more extreme places. It's like the northernmost tip of the east coast of the country. It's the top state. And, Maine's a lot different than the rest of America. And they don't want Gwen Walls going to Maine. Like she's that much of a dingbat and all this stuff that that shows you how bad the Harris campaign is, that they got to pull Gwen Walls because she's too weird. Okay, so you remember this?
In order to hide your own weirdness, we want you to accuse Trump and J.D. Vance of being weird. Just say it over and over again.
Weird, 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 weird. And then they start being weird. They're weird, 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 weird. Donald Trump's weirdness. Very weird, weird. It's just too weird. It's weird, weird.
So, see, this is a well put together thing. So remember, like, the use of weird, which they don't do anymore. I think ever since the debate when he looked kind of weird, and J.D. Vance is really weird, and he might be the most, like, J.D. Vance could be, like, totally the Antichrist. The rest of these, J.D. Vance is the only smart one in the crowd of the four, candidates here. But for his wife to be so weird, like, he's weird, and he's, walks like Richard Simmons, and I mean, he seems to be, possibly closetedly gay or whatever, right? But, he's really weird, strange, and, just the way that he behaves is something that you're like, yeah, that guy's strange, that guy's weird. But his wife's on a whole different level. And she's so weird they had to pull her from Maine, right? Which is great. It sucks, though, because I would have liked to see that, because I would have totally covered it, because her speeches are great. So, like, she's getting mocked so bad, and people are so off-put by her. Kamala Harris is one of the most unlikable politicians of all time. She's on the level of Hillary Clinton on dislikability. This guy's calling other people weird when he's weird, and his family's strange, but his wife is so bad, she's the one that they're hiding, right? I mean, Donald Trump is his own nightmare, and he's being rolled out there every possible way. And Joe Biden is still out there being completely senile, having dementia and having Parkinson's and, having cognitive issues. And the one they decide to hide out of all those people is Gwen Walls. Okay, so The Morning Joe did 2 interviews did a 15-minute segment with Jimmy Kimmel's, which is hilarious for lots of reasons. Let's start off here. Guess what they talked about?
Jimmy Kimmel's a loser. Look, we would do Jimmy Kimmel. I'd do Jimmy Kimmel. I did him a lot.
Maybe confusing me with Stormy Daniels? I don't know.
Maybe not. Because of your obsession with the guy. We'll get into that in a moment.
3 times. We've been on almost 22 years. You were on 3 times. Not a lot. Mike, the situation from Jersey Shore, was on this show more times than you, but go on.
There's probably no late night host who gets under Donald Trump's skin more than Jimmy Kimmel. In part 2 of my sit-down interview with the comedian, he talked about that and what he would do if Donald Trump wins another term.
I'm an optimistic person.
First of all, bro, what's going on here? You got the Gumby do in this. Now, Jimmy Kimmel's on ABC Disney. They got their own guy, Jimmy Fallon. The Tonight Show used to be the standard with Johnny Carson, who sucked, but, that was the big show. Everybody wanted the Tonight Show, which was, inherited where the guy was before Johnny Carson, and then all the stuff with Jay Leno and David Letterman. And Jimmy Kimmel's not on CBS, which then had David Letterman went on to that to have the Late Show. He's on an ABC show that's sort of newly created, right? Now, I don't know if they've ever had Jimmy Fallon on, but they're promoting this guy on MSNBC, right, against their own network. And he's horrible, right? He got down on his knees and serviced Hunter Biden, who wrote a book about being a crack addict. I mean, he's just horrible. Like, he's just, he was on that show, The Man Show, which was disrespecting women. It was misogynistic and it was racist. And he did blackface with Oprah Winfrey and Karl Malone, and just, not funny. He's not funny either. Like, none of his stuff's funny. He's, always been lowbrow and, just remedial writing that they do. It's, for dum-dums. And then he went full liberal, full feminist. And that's been embarrassing as well. And so he's been obsessed with Trump, and so they've put him on this show.
I'm not hysterical. I laugh when people say, oh, you've got Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
I think if you're a reasonable person, you should have Trump derangement syndrome.
No, you actually have it. I make fun of the Trumpers. Trumpers suck. You guys all know how I feel about Trumpers. And the fact that they have this cult-like Trump derangement syndrome or the other way, right?
And by the way, I think he has derangement syndrome about us, too. The fact of the matter is, this is a dangerous person. This is a stupid...
He's stupid and dangerous? You can't be both. You can't be a criminal mastermind and stupid, right?
Person. And that's a bad combination. And
again, you can only be one. You can't be a criminal mastermind and stupid. He's only dangerous if he's a criminal mastermind. He's able to get other stupid people to follow him, but he's a putz, and he doesn't really have any power, because power has to be given, and it's not given by the people who run the system, right? Anytime they want, they can get rid of the guy. They only have him there to be the fall guy and to push out their own agenda, right? But this guy totally has Trump derangement syndrome, and this is why. Okay, so he had Stormy Daniels on a number of times. And one of those times, he decided to he had his crew make a series of orange mushrooms, a whole platter full of them, that would most be like Trump's penis. And he presented them to Stormy Daniels because he wanted to know what Trump's penis looks like. Think about that for a little bit, right? This man wants to know what Trump's penis looks like. And he says he doesn't have Trump derangement syndrome. Like, have you ever heard a man ask, like if you're a woman, have you ever heard a man ask you what somebody else's penis looks like? Right? Another man's penis. Maybe Tim Walls, I don't know, would do that with his wife Gwen, I'm not sure. But for the most part, it's, really strange. Not for the most part, it is really strange for a heterosexual man to ask about that. And I don't even know about gay men, how much they would ask. But certainly for heterosexual men to be asking a woman about what another man's penis looks like is a very odd thing to do, right? Like if all the men in your life, did you ever have a man come up to you and say, hey, I know you slept with that guy, what does his penis look like? I really want to know. Describe it in detail to me, because that would be strange. It would be strange on every level, and this is even weirder, right? This is supposed to be a comedian. He's gone so far to have his crew make these orange mushrooms, and to do this. And this woman, whoever her name, and don't tell me, don't care, I don't need to know. She's strange in her own right, is there with them, and this is what happened. And so she's eventually picks one of the smaller mushrooms because that's how they treat the guy. And the guy's the president of the United States when this is happening. Like, Trump's the president, and this is what they're doing, right? And as people who are shills in the system, if you want to take down the system, fine. If you want to be a truther or whatever, right? But if you're one of these shills that is pushing the system, he works for ABC Disney, and he's pushing the whole agenda. He pushed the vax, he pushed the whole, all of it, right? If you're pushing the agenda, then you don't want to disrespect the office of the presidency. And I don't care if you do. Like, I like it when it's done, right? But, I like that Trump did that as a president because, the whole thing's a joke. But that's because I believe the whole thing's a joke, and I like to see it come out that way. This guy's a complete shill. And so this is legitimate Trump derangement syndrome. And they're obsessed with it, right? Now Trump was talking about it with Arnold Palmer, remember, the other day. And so that was, just like the whole thing, they're just really weird, right? Like, they're obsessed with other men's penises. Like, that's their thing. Trump, it's this thing apparently too, right? But this is, Obama did it multiple times with the speech about Trump's crowd size, and he put his hands, made his hands, certain size gesture apart. And then Bill Clinton did it. Both of them did it at the DNC. They're obsessed with Trump and his mushroom, right? Like, just what's you got Trump derangement syndrome, bro. When you do stuff like this, you legitimately have it. Like, there's so many dopey Trumpers out there that say that everybody has Trump derangement syndrome. Of course, everyone feels, the majority of people feel strongly one way about Trump or another. They either love him, which, they think he's your savior, and he's clearly not. Or, you think he's your evil champion or whatever you think about him. If you're voting for him, you have Trump derangement syndrome. Because the guy is horrible. And he's not anything that he says he is, and everything that he says he's going to do for you is a lie. He is not interested in any of those things. He didn't do them before. He's not going to do it again. There's no way of making America great again. That's just a false premise. But it can't happen. He can't reverse time. And then the more Trump's presidency, America got all the things that Americans love about America disappeared even more and faster during Trump presidency. You realize that, right? This rolling out of the whole gender thing and all that stuff, that happened because of the hatred of Trump, and they just pushed it through. They did a war on conservatism with Trump being the catalyst. And you have to realize that's what happened. During that period of time, all the stuff that you're upset about as Trumpers and as right-wing people, as Republicans, as conservative Christians, they did that mostly during Trump. America got way worse during Trump in terms of culturally and these other things. And that opened the door for all the liberal policies of Joe Biden and his pushing them through. There was the counter reaction where Joe Biden at one time had the House and the Senate, and they were able to do all the things, based in the hatred of Trump, right? And the border crisis and all that stuff was because they just, they went in there and they just didn't care about any of these things that Trump had done or what Trump was wanted or any of these things that Trump people wanted. They don't care about what you want, and they're not trying to please you, and they're trying to destroy the country or whatever. And so America got worse because of Trump. The last 8 years, America's morality and all these things have folded because of, the Trump being the catalyst for all that stuff. Trump is not making America great again. He's making America worse. But, this is clearly Trump derangement syndrome. Having said all that, they're right about this guy because this is an obsession.
I think what we're forgetting, I keep forgetting it, and I have to keep reminding myself, is he's not just running for president. He's running to stay out of prison. And that's a pretty powerful thing. He is literally running for his freedom.
But it seems like everybody sort of manned, for good reason, the sort of the battle stations. Whether you're talking about democracy, you can even look over the past week where Donald Trump's talking about arresting his political opponents.
Yeah, it's so serious. You're not funny, and you're not like a brilliant pundit. And so they're treating him like he has something to say. Like he sucks at a comedian. He sucks at his job. He's supposed to make people laugh, right? And he's not a real liberal. Like when he did the Man Show, he was the opposite of that. Like he was worse. All the things he hates about Trump and the things that he criticized Trump, he was exhibiting those behaviors. And that's how he really was. But he completely caved to be the kind of person ABC would allow to be on their late night show.
He tried to pressure Disney because of your jokes.
He believes CBS should have their license revoked.
Because he doesn't like how they edited a 60 Minutes package. How concerned are you about what you do right now?
They edited it in a way to make her look better, which isn't journalism. Again, they censored people. Eminem was talking about this in the last video. He talked about how that you don't have your freedom to express yourself, and Kamala's for your freedoms. But Joe Biden pushed for all that censorship. Hillary Clinton's pushing for that censorship of all of us and people on the internet, right? The same thing. Everything they criticize Trump about, they're doing. Not that Trump wouldn't do it. They just never give him the power to do it, right? He just bluffs and talks it, and he's like an idiot. And he talks about things that they're actually able to do because they don't do it stupidly like him, where he boasts about it and brags about it and threatens it, where they actually do it and without anybody calling them on it, right? It's insidious.
We have to change if Donald Trump is reelected.
Well, it won't change. I'm concerned, certainly. I think that it would be so un-American if he were to come after people who are speaking out against him.
What do you think, though, is happening in the country?
So you don't think he actually will do it? You actually don't think he would do it? That's what he's saying. That he's going to still criticize Trump and bring Stormy Daniels out with their mushrooms and do that kind of stuff, which is, this crosses a line on lots of levels. And it's just, again, with the weirdness, the Gwen Walls stuff. But, Tim Walls. But, he's not really scared because Trump says shit but doesn't mean it. Like Trump, we know he's a blowhard. He says stuff, but he doesn't ever actually do it or, he doesn't follow through on it.
Where you have 2 weeks out, and it's one thing to just look at Donald Trump and look at some, senators, but we're actually talking about 70, 75, 80 million people.
Yeah. I think we're focused on the wrong things. I think we're being focused on the wrong things. I think that there are certain news networks, if you want to call them that, who are lying to people. I think...
You do? Well, you mean Fox? MSNBC would never do that. This propaganda they put out, right? where they have said that Trump can't get elected, and he might. Like, he might win right now. He's going to win. And going into, a couple weeks out, he's going to win. And so, like, it's not the networks lying to people. It's that people suck and that people are dumb and they've fallen for Trump either way as a distraction. And there's a bigger problems at hand about a collapse of a system and overpopulation and, the collapse of morality in America, which this guy and his Hollywood buddies pushed through. But it's so weird that for MSNBC to put this out there. It's a 2-part interview. Like, this one's 8 minutes, so it's like they did 15 minutes of their show with basically the competition to their late night show because of his obsession with Trump and Trump's, whatever, obsession with him or whatever it is. Like, things are so weird and so degraded right now. Like, just think about that. And they'll do anything to try to sway a few voters. Like, who's going to be swayed by Jimmy Kimmel? I mean, who is out there that's waiting for Jimmy Kimmel to sway them to vote for Kamala Harris? It's silly.
This week on Morning Mika, Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney show us what...
So first of all, there was this thing that Huffington Post did about her, where she was talking about not being employed. She was like a single mom and got divorced, and then she couldn't find a job, right? And she talked about how it hurt her self-esteem, and she went to counseling and all these things, and how big it was. Her dad, Zbigniew Brzezinski, or Zbigniew, whatever his name is, was one of the worst global shills. She's Polish or Russian or whatever it is, right? And he was a part of the Kissinger group, all these, the Democratic leadership, and he was also with Kissinger, who was Republican, and he was a part of these, these various Council on Foreign Relations, CFO, and all these types of think tanks and whatever. He's one of the architects of this whole thing. And she's an inside shill, and she's rich and, comes from money. But she couldn't get a job and talked about it. Like, it was a whole thing she did for Huffington Post about women who can't get jobs and the whole, how horrible it was and how bad it was and how it did to her self-esteem and all these things. And then she landed a co-host on Morning Joe, which is about Joe Scarborough. And then she married the guy and then had to squeak out her own little thing called Morning Mika, right? Because let's go back to that, right? Like, she couldn't let him just be Morning Joe. She has to have her own.
This week on Morning Mika, Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney show us what real strength looks like. Watching Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris joining forces with staunch Republican Liz Cheney this week on the campaign trail in the battleground
state. Does this look like real strength? Look at the facial expressions here. There's something wrong with Liz Cheney. I mean, the Cheneys are just depressed and joyless people. Like, have you ever seen Dick Cheney exhibit any joy, any happiness, anything that would, like anything, that would be anything but Darth Vader-like affect. But this is real strength. At Morning Mika.
States of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin was powerful.
Powerful. It was so powerful. Women being powerful. Women like Mika. It should be Morning Mika and not Morning Joe. Get rid of that guy.
It was also a glaring beacon of warning for women across the United States. As they spoke on stage, I was moved to tears and beamed with pride all at the same time.
All at the same time. I beamed with pride, moved to tears.
I come to this decision as a mother.
Oh, wow. It's so moving. She's so authentic. She's so real.
I have 5 children. And
how is that possible? Boy, those kids suffer.
There was a moment right after January 6th when my husband and I were having dinner with our 2 youngest, our 2 sons. And I looked across the table at my young sons, and I thought to myself, in the aftermath of the attack on the Capitol, are they going to grow up in a country where we don't have to worry about the peaceful transfer of power?
Are they? I was sitting there.
Are they going to grow
so
up in
powerful.
A country where
so
that is
powerful.
guaranteed? And I believe that everyone...
I'm in tears, but I'm beaming with pride at the same time. It's women being so strong and so powerful.
One of us in this election has a duty and an obligation to do what we know is right for the country.
Which is
and
not
that's
to vote for
support
Trump.
Vice President Harris. So I'm very honored to be here to do that.
Here we have two women from two extremely different backgrounds.
Couple of women.
With completely opposing points of view on many of the core political issues, including...
And they're coming together for one reason, because of Donald Trump. And they bring out the mushrooms, and they have Jimmy Kimmel bring out the mushrooms. So this is like Morning Joe. It's just such a shill show. And now, like, she has only women guests on her Morning Mika. It's all about women, talking about women's stuff and women empowerment. And, you know, it's just the whole thing. It's just so icky. Again, this is flourishing under Trump. Like, these shows get better ratings because Trump is there. People who are worried about Trump, people who hate Trump. This is Trump making America not great again, empowering Morning Joe. Because of, like, you know, if Trump wasn't there, these shows would all tank. CNN and MSNBC, that's all they talk about. MSNBC is more obsessed with Trump than anybody else, except for maybe Jimmy Kimmel.
Thinks he has a right under the Supreme Court ruling on immunity to be able, if need be, if it was the case, to actually physically eliminate, shoot, kill someone who he believes to be a threat to him.
That's not what he said. This guy has always been a suck. He's always sucked. He's horrible. He plagiarized when he ran for president his first time. He was just, you know, he always a gaffe magnet, always saying stupid stuff, running his mouth, being, you know, he's a lifelong politician and a bad one. He's a scumbag in his own life and all these things. You know, his wife died and that stuff with Jill Biden. She was like 18-year-old and married to somebody else. And, you know, the stuff that went on with him, like just somebody whose family's a mess and just all of it. You know, just a weird guy. But now he has Parkinson's, and he's had it for a while. And Morning Joe has celebrated this guy like he's the greatest president of all time. And all these people. And Jimmy Kimmel servicing his son, who's a crackhead, instead of, you know, asking him legitimate questions about the fact that the guy was selling access to his dad, which everybody knows happened, right? The scumbag stuff, he's a scumbag, and he's just you know, and then now he's got dementia, and the Democratic Party perpetrated a fraud, as did the media, on the American people, and having this guy who's senile be president, making a joke of the whole thing. Disrespecting the presidency by showing you that there is no real president, which we now know from Donald Trump, that they don't give these guys real power. And so they just, you know, they're more of a puppet. You know, they're just people who are out there as a shield for the people who are really making the decisions. You know, they are the ones that have to take the heat for decisions that are being made that they're told to do by people running running the show from behind the scenes. But this guy's gone. Like, this guy's fucking gone.
I mean, so I know this sounds bizarre. It sounds like if I said this 5 years ago, you'd lock me up. We got to lock him up.
Okay, so they stopped it there, but I showed you the other part of this quote, I think in my last video, where he talks about locking Trump up politically, just weird stuff. But this guy's gone. Like, he is gone. He's no longer there, right? He's just gone. He's mentally broken down completely. He has, you know, Parkinson's, and, you know, it's showing. And so, like, let's keep that in mind as we go through the Kamala Harris thing coming up, her disastrous town hall. Okay, so this is Kamala Harris's town hall. And it's a day before the election. And, not day before, 2 weeks. What am I talking about? But, you know, they're giving her free whatever it is here. And she's kind of desperate. And they hid her away in the beginning. Remember, she did do interviews, she did rallies, and then she had to be rolled out at the end. Just enough time for people to realize that they dislike her, which they were hoping that you know, there wouldn't be enough time. But I hear this is a disaster, and it looks like it is because I've watched just the first few seconds of it. And, you know, her obsession with Trump, and even a video of Jake Tapper saying that he had wished she'd talked more about her stuff and less about Trump. So I think she went on a full Trump rant here. I don't know if this is the whole thing, but, you know, I don't know if I could get through it anyway. I don't know if these are the good parts, but let's watch a little bit of it here, and then I might cover this a little bit more in my next video.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
so
evening,
much.
everyone. Good evening.
Thanks
Good evening. It's me, Kamala Harris.
Much for being with us. We're going to get to the audience in just a second. I want to start by asking you, though, for weeks you have been calling Donald Trump unstable, unhinged. You've called him dangerous. You've quoted General Milley recently, who called him a fascist. Today, you quoted General Kelly, who said that Trump repeatedly praised Hitler.
Yeah.
But there are tens of millions of Americans right now who have heard all those things, and they don't buy it, or even if they do, they're still going to vote for Donald Trump. He's arguably more popular now than ever. You have 13 days to go. What do you say to those voters to convince them? Because some of them are in this room.
Sure, and I thank you all for taking the time to be here. And you could be doing a number of other things with your time.
And almost anything would be better. Almost any fucking thing you could be doing right now. You could be smoking crack. You could be robbing a bank. Almost anything you would be doing would be more justifiable use of your time than listen to her say shit that she's been saying for the past 3 months, rehearsed lines that aren't anything to do with who she is authentically or anything to do with what she believes or what she will do as president. And so this is a complete waste of your time on every level. But go ahead, sit there and listen to me say the same old bullshit again.
So this really is proof that we love our country. People are engaged, Anderson, and really want to talk about the issues. And so
they do. And then you know why I want to talk about Trump.
That you raise. Yes, I do believe that Donald Trump is unstable, increasingly unstable.
And you know what? Like with Joe Biden, like this guy, I mean, was showing no signs of dementia when I ran against him and laughed at him at the debate because he was senile as fuck. Like that guy, he got better somehow from the time that I was right against him, and he was not. He doesn't have Parkinson's, and he doesn't have. His brain isn't like rotting away right in front of us. He's not deteriorating. He can actually walk up a flight of stairs, right? And you know, it behooves me. It's not like it benefits me at all. It doesn't behoove me at all to tell you that my opponent is unstable because that would mean that you might have to vote for me. So there's no self-interest in what I'm saying here.
Unfit to serve.
He's unfit to serve. And so there is another option, if you don't like him.
I don't necessarily think that everyone has heard what you and I have heard repeatedly, which is the people who know Donald Trump best, the people who worked with him in the White House, in the Situation Room, in the Oval Office, all Republicans, by the way, who served in his administration, his former chief of staff.
These guys, all of them.
His national security advisor.
I almost forgot that one, but I pulled it out at the end.
Former secretaries of defense and his vice president have all called him unfit and dangerous.
They all did. And still, yet you guys are still going to vote for him. Shows you that you don't give a fuck what we say here in Washington, D.C. because you don't trust us at all. And when we say stuff like that, it only gives him street cred because you guys hate us so much, so he must be good if we're saying he's bad. And so it just goes to show you how jaded people are about Washington, D.C. and the media.
Said explicitly he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. They have said he should never again serve as president of the United States.
They've said these things. It's so serious because you know what it would mean? It would mean that you would vote for me. So, let's take this seriously.
We know that is why Mike Pence is not running with him again, why the job was empty.
It was an empty job. It wasn't because Mike Pence was a wooden statue.
And then today we learned that John Kelly, a 4-star Marine general.
The 4 stars he has, not 3 fucking stars like those other losers. He's got 4 of them. He's got 4 fucking stars.
Who was his longest serving chief.
He was his longest serving guy. He served him forever. He was like just great at serving Trump.
Staff. Gave an interview recently in the last 2 weeks of this election.
Crazy that just the timing of it.
Talking about how dangerous Donald Trump is.
He's pretty dangerous, that guy. He's kind of dangerous. I mean, he's pretty dangerous. I'm not dangerous at all.
And I think
I'm a virtual puppy dog. Donald Trump's dangerous.
Has to think about why would someone who served with him, who is not political, a 4-star Marine general, why is he telling the American people now? And frankly,
I don't know. It's just the timing of it. Maybe he's trying to sabotage Trump for some personal grievance. No one gives a shit about this guy or any of it, right? Because nobody believes any of you because it's all just bullshit, right?
Think of it as he's just putting out a 911 call to the American people.
A 911 call to all of you. Don't vote for this guy. I'm telling you right now.
Understand what could happen if Donald Trump were back in the White House.
What could happen if you were in the White House? What would happen if Joe Biden, who's senile, and the guy whose brain's deteriorated and you've lied about, you've gaslighted the American people. And the American people know the guy's not fit. And you continually lie about it, right? It's the same thing that's going to happen with that. Nothing, because you guys aren't making the fucking decisions. You guys are just puppets that are out in front of people. And what's going to happen whether you get elected or Donald Trump gets elected is America's going down and down hard. And anybody with half a brain can see it, right?
And this time, we must take very seriously.
Take your vote seriously. Other times you just throw your vote away. You can just write in Mickey Mouse. But this time you have to be serious.
Folks who knew him best and who were career people.
These career people. We always listen to these career people.
Not going to be there to hold him back. At least before, there were folks who we know what he would say, but they would restrain him.
They would physically restrain him because he's such a powerhouse.
Imagine now Donald Trump in the Oval Office, in the Situation Room. He who has openly admired dictators, said he would be a dictator on day one.
Day one he would be. He said that, and you guys still are voting for him. What's wrong with you?
The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has said he is...
She goes on like this. It's like, all right, so at some point they're going to go to audience questions. Here we go.
You meet a registered Republican who's very concerned about Trump's views on democracy and January 6th. She told us she's looking for a reason to vote for you, but is yet to make her final decision. Her name is Natasha Kwiatkowski. She's a student at Bryn
Kwiatkowski is out there.
College. What's your question, Natasha?
Awesome. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking my question.
Thank you, Natasha.
And as someone who hasn't fully committed to either party, how do you plan to address the concerns of independent voters and anti-Trump Republicans like myself who feel left out of the polarized political landscape? And what specific actions would you take to bridge the political divide and create more unity?
That's a wonderful question.
Oh, it's a wonderful question. Let me stall and try to think of something they told me to say because I can't remember it offhand.
I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
I do. I pledge. That's how I'll do it. My pledge to you, Nikowski.
And I think to the point of, in the spirit of your question, that people are frankly exhausted with what has been happening over the last several years, which is this environment that is suggesting that Americans should be pointing fingers at one another.
Exactly. Several years. This has never happened before. We always got along up until the last several years. And somehow it's Trump's fault, even though my guy, the senile guy, was president.
That we are divided as a nation, instead of what I think you and I will speak for us, I think, who believe and know. The vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us.
Exactly. We have so much in common. Like me and you, we could sit down, we'd have at least 3 things in common. Like 2 of them would be how we feel about Donald Trump. And then a third one, like we're women, like something like that.
And I think that the American people deserve to have a president who is grounded in what is common sense, what is practical, and what is in the best interest of the people.
Okay, so you didn't say what you exactly would do to bridge the gap, but just like talking about this stuff, like, you know, like a beauty contestant?
Themselves. I started my career as a prosecutor.
Okay, good. This story, I haven't heard this story before. Is it why? Why did you do that?
And I will tell you, I never in most of my career.
She never said this thing. She never said.
It was outside of Washington, D.C., by the way.
She never asked any of the people whether she was a Democrat or Republican when she was doing her fucking job as prosecutor. I never said to him, before I do my job and prosecute somebody for criminally hurting you, I want to know if you're a Democrat or Republican. I never asked that. Like, that shows you the kind of person I am, that I actually did my job regardless of their political views. Because every other prosecutor in America asks the victim what their political leanings are. Because they don't care about winning cases. They just want to only support the people they only want to prosecute people that have victimized people that believe the same things they do.
Only 4 years when I was in the Senate were in Washington, other than being vice president. I have never, in my career as a prosecutor, asked a victim or a witness of a crime, are you a Democrat or a Republican?
Oh, yeah. Like we saw this in your commercial. We saw you say it 20 fucking times, right? You're incapable of giving a real answer. Like that nobody would do that. No prosecutors just care about their own political career and winning cases that are going to booster their credentials. Somebody who's got goals of being a senator and a vice president and a president, who's going to run for president and who's done all these things as district attorney, all these fake programs and shit, and written books and interviewed with Matt Lauer so she could move up the ladder. And, do you think that a woman who's servicing a 60-year-old man when she's 29 and when she's on her knees servicing the guy, she's thinking about how she's doing that all so she can help you? And she doesn't care about Democrats or Republicans? No, she cares about herself, right? Like that's the kind of person that's doing this for herself. She's not doing it for you, just like Trump isn't doing it for you. They're not those kind of people.
The only thing I've ever asked is, are you okay?
Exactly. Like, that'll show you. This woman's never heard that before in your commercials or the speeches, and now she's going to vote for you because you've swayed her over with this plan of how to bring America back together again by not asking them whether they're Democrats or Republicans in the past.
And I do believe that is what the American people deserve in their president.
That's exactly the kind of person that would do that kind of thing, because I didn't ask that question that nobody in their right mind would ask. Like a woman who had been arred by some guy and physically beaten up and go in there and say, the only thing I asked are you okay? No, I'm not, because, I'm traumatized. I'm still having PTSD. But thanks for asking if I'm okay or not, because that's not why I'm here. I want you to put this motherfucker in jail for me. Okay, I'll do that because it'll help my career. So I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican. I'm not going to ask you whether you are or not, because it'll help my career if I put this guy in jail. So I'll do that for you. But are you okay? No. Are you okay? No, I'm serious. Are you okay?
And not someone who makes decisions based on who voted for them.
Okay, so this is about Trump.
Or what is in their personal interest. And I reference that because, as we know, it has been revealed that Donald Trump, when he was president, during extreme disasters, when it came time to determine how those areas, those people who had been traumatized by extreme weather would get relief, he asked the question, did they vote for him?
Boom. He did do that. I would never do that, so I'm better than him.
I believe the American people deserve better.
Yeah, so someone who says absolutely nothing. You had nothing of substance. Come up with something that you could do that would bridge the gap. How could you reach out to Republicans? How could you sway people who are so divided and so so full of hatred and vitriol? How could you bring people back together? Name something that you could do, or something that could be done. That's what the woman asked. Then you just brought it back to Trump with this goofy commercial story that you've told over and over again.
And they deserve a president who is focused on solutions, not sitting in the Oval Office plotting their revenge and retribution.
Boom, exactly, Trump. Okay, so let's segue to the post town hall coverage here, where the Dana Bash and Jake Tappers take a giant crap on Kamala Harris, who's come to their network and who they forgave all the Joe Biden. I mean, they were the debate hosts who saw Joe Biden fall apart. And they were the most sort of vicious about getting rid of the guy. And then they pretended like that never happened. But here they are turning on her 2 weeks before the election. And this video is called Caitlin Collins, Why She Found Harris Opening Trump Criticism in the Town Hall Interesting. And they're going to take a crap on Caitlin as well here. It's pretty great.
She focused a lot more on Donald Trump, I think it's fair to say, than she did on many specifics in terms of what she would do as president. But she did go into...
Okay, so I saw this little bit here. And it was the first thing, when I searched for the town hall, this was the first video that came up. So CNN was promoting and YouTube is promoting them disparaging her on her performance here. Again, they're basically saying she's going to lose, right?
Some of her plans for small businesses and the like. Of course, with only 13 days to go and Trump and Harris fighting over these last few undecided voters, and in fact, trying to get undecided voters to even vote. We'll see.
This is her compassionate face.
Whether or not she achieved what she needed to.
That's her compassionate nod.
Achieve this evening. Dana Bash, your thoughts?
Well, I'll just tell you what I'm hearing from people who I've been talking to, and that is that if her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that.
So she didn't do that. She's talking to Democratic establishment, people and people in her campaign, saying did she close the deal, and of course she didn't, because she can't close the deal. She doesn't have the kind of campaign to close the deal. She's not that gifted as a politician to close the deal, right? Which means they know Donald Trump's going to win. So CNN is just crapping all over her. Like to say these sort of things 10 days out or 2 weeks out or whatever it is.
And, some people have asked, is she being held to a different standard? Maybe.
Maybe, but that's just how it is.
But that's maybe the world that she's living in.
That's the world that she's living in.
And on the question of who
look, she's being compassionate to this woman here.
She is, people are understanding that a little bit more, but what she will do,
they don't know any of those two things.
About her legislative priorities, name one, there wasn't one. Some more of her personality and her sort of character.
So nothing in terms of her legislative policies, and nothing on who she is as an authentic person. She's saying they didn't get any of that, which we haven't seen any of that since the beginning. Because what's happened here is they knew they were dealing with a remedial candidate, and maybe they wanted Donald Trump from the beginning. I don't know what the Democrats, the Democrats and the Republicans have to believe in what they're doing, even if they don't believe in what they're doing. Like they have to believe in winning, right? And then they're told by the people, the powers that be, and maybe to some extent the American people, lesser extent, that it's not going to work out for you. But they all want to win. They're competitive people. And they look at this as, if you're a part of the campaign, if you lose, it's a reflection on you. Just like if you're a coach or you're a general manager of a football or basketball or baseball team or hockey team or something, if you lose, it's a reflection on you. So they're all trying to win. But, they're forces beyond their control, right? And so they were given a bad hand with Biden that they created themselves, which was a guy who had Parkinson's who was deteriorating right in front of the American people's eyes. So they come up with this solution, all right, let's go with Kamala Harris, right? Let's stick Kamala Harris in there. And they knew they were dealing with a person who was so totally unlikable. And if they ran her the way she ran herself, or they ran her in 2020 for president, she was going to lose badly. So they had to hide away her laugh, which is probably kind of her best asset, that she's joyful. Like she is legitimately joyful, not in a way that makes you feel good, but at least that's something. But they hid that part of her personality away, and that's all of her personality, because she laughs like that all the fucking time, right? And so they hid that away. And they, like when they have a rookie quarterback, they don't open up the full playbook. They keep it simple. They don't overwhelm the person. And so they slowly started to open up the playbook for her. But the playbook was a bunch of set stories, these stories that they created. She sat down and they did some sort of personality architecture where they created a persona, and she repeats these same stories over and over again. They let her do that in crowds that were friendly, and then eventually in terms of interviews. And then she could criticize Donald Trump more and more as time went on, because she started off as the joy candidate, the let's turn the page candidate, and then ended up being just like every other Democrat and news meter person. Trump is the devil. Let's talk about how bad he sucks, right? And so they never opened up the full playbook because they didn't have somebody they counted on to connect with the American people, because she's unlikable. And so that's what you're seeing here. They thought with only 3 months to run her, they could kind of hide her personality and just bank on the fact that people wanted to move on from both Biden and Trump. That's the whole turn the page part. But that hasn't been the case. So CNN, which again has been propping up Biden, not as much as MSNBC, but certainly that's their whole thing, is now turning on her when she came onto their network to do this town hall.
Questions about your weaknesses or what mistakes did you make? Not necessarily the answers there. Having said that, Any time that she can be in front of an audience and interacting with voters is a win as far as her campaign goes.
Okay, that makes no sense at all. It only is if she comes off well. Like, this is where you're trying to win something, which is in terms of votes. And she's coming off poorly. Like, she's coming off worse than, all the things that people think about her, the negative things, she cemented here, right?
And they are very happy about that.
They're very happy that she got to be on TV. That's what they're saying. How did she do? Well, we're happy she was on TV. Yeah, but how do you think she performed? Well, she was on TV. Do you see she was on TV? On CNN, of all places, where, there's at least a couple 100,000 70-plus-year-old people watching. I mean, she was on CNN where all these 70-year-old people, they vote those people. Most of them vote Democratic already, but, she was on TV. You see her? She was on TV.
Drawing the contrast with Trump, something that she has been really trying to do in the last several weeks that we've seen, where she's gone after him as unstable, unfit for the presidency, saying he doesn't belong behind the seal of the office anymore.
So this is the title of the video, and like they're trying to minimize it so you watch it or whatever, or don't watch it, because these other guys are taking a shit on him, right? But watch how she gets shut down here by Jake Tappers. It's like kind of awesome.
After he suggested terminating the Constitution, she had a new angle.
Because Jake Tapper says stuff I've been saying for years, and certainly months now of this campaign, and they always come back to what I say. Like, they would inevitably, these guys always repeat what I say or other truthers say or whatever, because it's obvious. They just won't go there. The truth is obvious, right?
For that tonight, and that's because of John Kelly, his former chief of staff, coming out with his on-the-record comments yesterday.
Exactly. The timing of that is impeccable.
Saying he met the
It's almost like an October surprise.
Definition of a fascist and that he's admired Hitler. That was something that she was within seconds of taking the stage. And that first question from Anderson, where she said that, yes, she agrees Trump is a fascist, where she took that moment and tried to really sharpen it.
You mean that when Anderson Cooper put that on a tee for her because everyone knew exactly what the fuck she was going to say? You mean that moment, Caitlin?
And make news out of it from where, she's been talking about this for weeks, but tried to draw that contrast even further for a lot of people, including the people in this audience who are undecided and maybe have not heard.
At some point in time, they took Caitlin, who used to ask questions and be a reporter, to where she now gives her opinion, right? That's the transition. And she sucks at both. But remember, Trump didn't like her, whatever that was. But I guess Trump liked her enough that she was the moderator when he did his CNN town hall. Remember how differently that went in terms of all of it. And she was criticized for that. But they put her on the morning show with Don Lemons and that other woman. And, Don Lemons imploded. And then she got her own primetime show, right? But she's, like, even more remedial than these other people. Like, these other people are more adult. She's younger. And she's just saying something that's, like, so patently obvious, right? When she should be able... And this is... Like, she had to be the patsy in the panel to say something pro-Kamala so they could slam her and say, yeah, you're wrong.
Those comments or aren't familiar with what John Kelly has been saying. I thought it was really interesting that she came out of the gate, and that was one of the first things that she was talking about in the town hall.
Although, John, I do wonder, I think after 8 years of Donald Trump, people are aware of Donald Trump's...
Yes, take that, Caitlin. Kaboom. She got tappered. He tappered her. This is what I've been saying. Trump is a known entity. You've heard me say it over and over in these videos. People have, this is the Bill Clinton paradox, where Bill Clinton got caught having sex with an 18-year-old intern in the Oval Office and lied about it. Got caught perjuring himself, right? And got impeached, and he just didn't quit. And I've talked about this over and over again. Trump learned from Bill Clinton. You just don't quit, and so did Jimmy Kimmel. Like, Jimmy Kimmel got caught, when the Me Too stuff was going on and Black Lives Matter was going on, and he got caught using blackface in his past pretty viciously. Was also fat-shaming Oprah. He dressed up in a fat suit and with blackface and pretended to be Oprah Winfrey, and it was pretty degrading. And then he did the same thing with Karl Malone. And he just went on vacation for 3 months, and by the time he came back, they forgot all about him. As opposed to Ellen, who stayed on the air and received criticism. Remember, Louis C.K. got, Me Too'd for, stuff that was semi-minor, but he admitted to it. Whereas Woody Allen married his stepdaughter, like his adopted daughter, who was 18 years old, and then made out with a 15-year-old girl who played an 18-year-old girl in a movie, that in real life, an 18-year-old girl who dated Woody Allen when she was in high school said, yeah, that actually happened in the movie Manhattan, right? Woody Allen is an absolute pedo and hung out with Jeffrey Epstein. And, he married this young woman that was his wife's adopted daughter, which is completely effed up. But Woody Allen just never admitted it and just, lasted the test of time, right? Whereas Louis C.K. did. And so we know that this is the case with people, that after a while they just accept you're a scumbag. And they've accepted that Donald Trump is a WWE-style villain, and that's good enough for them because they think he's their villain. And people are not, they don't have character qualities anymore. They don't care about honesty and integrity. Their morality has shifted. So Donald Trump doesn't have to be anything than he is. Like people accepted him for who he is. And he's at least maybe the guy that's going to champion our cause because he's the villain he's our villain, right? And so that's what I've been saying. So you can't paint him any worse. There's no October surprise for Trump because we already know he's a piece of shit, right? And so, stop talking about him because it makes you look like you're whining about him.
Persona, his proclivity for controversy, his potential to offend, and the like. And I wonder if you think maybe she did too much of what Caitlin's talking about.
I think that is a fascinating question, is how do you balance it, right? How much time do you have with any voter, whether it's in a TV ad or it's in a town hall? In that time that you have...
You don't say anything about Trump at all. You don't. This isn't going to... her saying bad things about her opponent... When you guys are doing that, and the Morning Joe's doing that, and celebrities are doing that, and Jimmy Kimmel's doing that, you don't need to. Everyone knows about Donald Trump, right? Well, she had an opportunity to define herself as a person in terms of her policies, and she didn't do either of those things. And I'll show you more. I'm gonna end this video. I'm gonna stop my coverage of this here, but I'll show you the upcoming video. I'll find more stuff with her doing it, but I know she just whines about Trump the whole time because she can't show who she is as a person because she's unlikable, and she really isn't a person of substance, just like Joe Biden, just like Trump is. They're very superficial people. There's no depth to what they could do, but Trump is good at making you feel like he's like on your side, or he knows he knows what you want to hear and he says it. Like he's a good salesman. She's not good at that. And they haven't allowed her to do that. They've given her scripted lines. And she doesn't have any real policies because all their policies is, well, we're not Trump, right? Which hasn't worked the last 3 years. And so I don't know if she was meant to lose at the beginning. I don't know if they're going to rig this thing at the end for her and this is going to make people outraged. But going into this thing, they're saying she's going to lose. That she didn't close the deal, and there was no deal to close, right? Because she couldn't do the things that she needed to do to be elected. They were just hoping that people would not vote. Donald Trump was hard capped at 48%. In the beginning of this election, 8 months ago, 52% of people said under no circumstance was they going to vote for this motherfucker. Right, 52%. He had only 48% potential votes, so they needed a third-party candidate. They needed something to pull some of that so he could win with 48%. I mean, that's what was going into it. But all them whining about him. And this is what happens when you whine about a guy. If you just keep on complaining about somebody, after a while they're like, maybe it's you. Maybe you need to be a victim. If you don't move on from your own, mistreatment of other people and you obsess with it, it's like, why are you keeping this relationship going, right? Just cut your stop talking about the person, stop obsessing with the person, stop doing these things, right? Just move on. Anybody will tell you that. Anything that happens to you, if you're still fixated on something, 10 years after, 8 years, 20 years after, no matter how tragic it is or how difficult it is, you have to move on with your life, right? You have other people in your life, you have other responsibilities, you have other things. And so the Democratic people and the Democratic Party and the mainstream media will never move on from Trump totally. And it's just like he's a joke. He's a piece of putz, right? And they've taken the focus off of what they should become. And they're only like, well, we're not him. Well, yeah, but you're just as bad, and at least he's something, and you're nothing, right? You're just, you're living in his shadow. You have a short shadow of Mordor. And so, they If CNN's calling you out and it's a couple weeks before the election, everyone knows you've lost. And she has this kind of demeanor here, pleading with the American people, oh, Donald Trump is a villain, and you got it. Well, no, what are you? Are you a hero? You're not. So don't talk about Trump, right? No one's going to save you. Like, the thing is that everyone's got to realize the system can't be saved. No one's going to save you, and you don't deserve to be saved, which I'll talk about in my next video. Like, do we really deserve to be saved? America deserve to be saved? No. You know, it's the whole Christian Jesus will save you. Do you deserve to be saved? Do you really deserve to be saved? In fact, I'll talk about this at the beginning of the video, and I'll come back to this here. I'll do a new introduction about this. But do you deserve to be saved? Like, think about it. Do you personally and does the country deserve to be saved? Either spiritually by Jesus or politically by Kamala Harris or Trump or anybody else? No, like, you don't deserve. You have to be deserving. You know, saving is something that happens when you failed miserably and you need to be bailed out. You got to win the lottery. Like, you know, you wouldn't need to be saved if you were you're being the kind of person God wanted you to be. Your soul wanted you to be. And everyone was living that way, and our system was a reflection of that. Then there would be no question of saving. You'd be doing the right thing. You'd be doing God's work, and when you're working for God, then God, whatever you get from God is justified, and you accept it because it's God's will, and you're right with God, and God's doing, you know, whatever He needs to do because you're serving God, and God is supporting you in this service, right? When you serve God, your service of God is supported. When you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, God is helping you out to achieve your work that's God's work, right? The divine work that you're doing on God's behalf. And so nobody's talking about America being like that, or you being like that as a person, or everyone being like that. Nobody even talks about shit like that, right? I mean, like, I'm probably the only person. Certainly the religion, is your religion doing what's supposed to do? No, your religion sucks. It's taking people away from God. It's acting as a middleman between you and God. So it's all these things. You know, it's all bullshit. It's all wrong. It's all an abomination. And so it needs to go. Like, it has to go for those reasons, right? Anyways. Okay, so this is kind of a nightmare for the Democrats and Kamala Harris if it isn't part of a plan to hand Trump the White House. But it got even worse. So I went to eat breakfast, and I turned on CNN, and this guy, this Trump-hating guy, well, I'll show it here.
Vice President Kamala Harris not holding back in her warnings about a second term in the White House for Donald Trump. Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Wow, you said that with such conviction. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I do think Donald Trump is a fascist. You know, like, you would be, I mean, everybody knows what the narratives are about Donald Trump, like I said before. And so this isn't some bombshell thing. It means you're desperate. Like, you're going in trying to say all this stuff that is already played out. Like, everyone knows what Donald Trump is. I said this before. But if he really was a fascist, and I don't think the majority of Americans know or care what that means, right? You know, it means where corporations and government merge into one. You know, business and government merge into one, which is what all of them are to one extent or another, right? It's what the UN is pushing with paid and private partnerships, public and private partnerships, PPPs. It was a part of their, whatever that thing was called, one of their agenda things that they were doing, that the UN was doing. And they wanted to have, like, private institutions, like companies, buy a stake in public-owned properties like the Grand Canyon and run the Grand Canyon and run roads. You know, that's fascism, right? They were all pushing for that. But anything you say about Donald Trump in terms of any of these things that you're saying, you know, to have it be a bombshell, it has to be something new and something explosive. And really, there isn't much else you can say about the guy, right? And she says it, yes, I do. Yes, I do believe he's a fascist. He's a fascist. And it just sounds like you're desperate to win the election. And so it's pathetic, and that's how she started off. Like, I didn't get to that part. But it gets even worse with this guy here, Jim Acosta. You remember Jim Acosta and Trump got into it. It was one of the people Trump really hates. He's the most Trump-hating guy on CNN staff. He used to cover Trump and be very aggressive, and now they gave him his own show, which is horrible. And he even shits on Kamala Harris here. First, let me show you his memes.
It sounds like, I know you are, but what am I?
What's next? I'm rubber and you're glue? Nana boo boo? It's not if you do a coup, good for you. World goes from let's go Brandon to oh no Bannon.
To describe Trump as a danger to the country. Harris is set to deliver her closing message in a speech next week from the Ellipse near the White House, where Trump delivered his infamous January 6th speech in 2021.
So first of all, let's start there. So she's going to do her closing argument at the place where Trump delivered that speech where he encouraged people to go up and go up to Capitol Hill and let the politicians know how they feel, right? And you know, that was a stupid speech on Trump's part, and he got worked, and, you know, I've talked about that before. You know, Trump's a piece of shit, right? And whatever he is, whether he's, you know, he's aware that he's screwing you over or he just does it automatically, I mean, lying to you and deceiving you or whatever. That is whatever it is. But she's, you know, nothing says I'm turning the page more than giving her closing argument at the speech where Trump did this infamous event, you know, the big lie stuff and all this stuff. I mean, they love talking about January 6th more than anything else. And so it's pathetic on her part, right? I mean, she has nothing to say herself. And I'm going to show you that because there's one more CNN town hall clip I got to show here today. I'll probably cover this more next time because she really bombs. She does horribly. Like, it's really bad. I mean, CNN, you're going to listen to Acosta call her out here. But for her to go to the Ellipse and go to that spot, what about doing the spot on your own, like making something iconic because you're a part of it, not something iconic because Trump made it iconic, right? Like, it's so pathetic. It's so sad, right?
Good morning. You are live in the CNN newsroom. I'm Jim Acosta in Washington. All right, let's get right to CNN's Eva McKend in Pennsylvania, where the critics in the party had hoped she would have a stronger performance at that CNN town hall last night. What's the campaign saying?
This never happens. They always gloss over the failure, but maybe they're backing away from this because they know that she's set to lose. They've been told to back away, but her campaign's kind of in shambles. She's going in the wrong direction, and then for this guy who hates Trump to say she had a weak performance, and people in the party are saying she has a weak performance. But listen to this reporter who contacts her campaign, and this is her campaign's answer to her horrible performance.
About her performance, Eva, what can you tell us?
Well, Jim, they are confident in the strength of the argument that the vice president is making, that the former president, in her view, is unfit and unhinged, and that he is exhibiting behavior that would indicate a second Trump presidency would bring extremes.
See, that argument fails. And again, I'm not rooting for Trump. The Trump nightmare is beginning right now. And it's going to be a nightmare. But, you know, her argument fails because, one, we had a Trump presidency before it. He wasn't, you know, he didn't do any of the things they're saying he's going to do this time. And two, Joe Biden's been senile now for 4 years. And to say that, you know, Trump's unhinged when we all saw what, Biden was, it's so much worse, right? And then she still won't admit Biden's senile. So her argument completely fails. But this is the hilarious part here.
But listen, they are also talking about reproductive rights. The campaign up today with a brand new ad featuring the harrowing story of a Texas woman who suffered a medical emergency when she could not access adequate reproductive care. Take a listen.
Her blanket.
First of all, I'm the one that got rid of Roe v. Wade.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? There has to be some form of punishment. For the woman? Yeah, there has to be some form.
Holy shit, that's bad. Their answer is, we got to kill fetuses, and no one's going to watch this ad. This isn't going to change anything. Like, it's just, we saw it it's just, everyone knows this stuff. You have nothing then, right? Because what you need to do now is stop talking about Trump and define yourself as a candidate. And she fails. Let me show you this last clip here, and then I'll wrap this one up, and I'll cover this probably more next video. But this one's I mean, this is classic. So this is part 2 of the town hall. And I started watching, I'm like, I got to include this. Because this, at least if I don't cover any more of this thing, this defines how bad she did. And so this guy's going to ask a question about food prices.
Let me introduce you to Eric Swenson. He runs a service desk for an IT company in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. He's registered as a libertarian, describes himself as an independent. He says he's undecided. Eric?
Thank you, Anderson. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Eric.
So my question is concerning groceries. Grocery prices have gone up.
Yup.
Quite a bit in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And some people blame former President Trump. Some people blame President Biden.
Okay, the majority of people blame Biden. Let's get that straight.
Would you say is correct? And
who do you think is at fault? You and Biden or Trump? And miraculously, she doesn't get into that. Not really, like sideways. But she doesn't say Trump's at fault. She actually offers a solution here. Like, she usually doesn't. But her solution sucks so bad and it's so stupid, it's not a real solution.
What would you do to bring prices down for Americans?
Thank you, Eric. And you're absolutely right. You know it. I know it. I think most Americans know it. Price of groceries is still too high.
Too high. Too fucking high.
And we need to address it in a number of ways. One of my aspects of doing what we need to do to bring down the cost of living for working people and the middle class in America is to address the issue of grocery prices. Part of my background...
Boom. Okay, so how are you going to do that? Let's hear your plan.
And how I come to it is probably a new approach, grounded in a lot of my experiences as a former attorney general.
You were an attorney general. How did you get that job? You got on your knees and you serviced a guy twice your age, right? That's how you got to... Like, can that help me with my grocery prices? Probably not.
I took on price gouging.
Took on price gouging.
And part of my plan is to create a new approach that is the first time that we will have a national ban on price gouging.
No way. Okay, that still doesn't deal with my problem, but go ahead.
Which is companies taking advantage of the desperation and need of the American consumer and jacking up prices without any consequence or accountability.
Wait, what is it? Explain that again, because can you talk more slowly? I don't understand what price gouging is. That explanation was good, but I think it was a little bit too quick. Can you explain that again like I'm a freaking child? This thing is ridiculous. Let's let her finish here.
So that is one way. But to your point, Eric,
So that's one way. So what they did here was, this was part of Joe Biden's platform. When he was asked about food prices, he said it was price gouging. Because they couldn't blame Trump. Because these prices weren't that high under Trump, plus they kind of forced Trump to close down the economy. I mean, they don't admit to that, but they couldn't blame Trump. No one's going to buy that. The real reason is because inflation. Because the dollar is worth so much less than they're saying it is. They're saying that inflation's 5, 10%, whatever it is, but it's like 50, 100%. And they're even, they're purposely holding prices down in ways that, by rigging the low interest loans and things, the real estate market, and by not allowing gold to go higher than it actually is. Gold should be way higher because inflation's just really bad. And so they said, all right, what can we do? Well, let's blame big corporations and say that they're price gouging. But they're not price gouging on everything. They're not price gouging across the board. They're not doing this, to the extent of everything that you buy in the grocery store is more. It's not every company. It's silly. She's going to admit to that in a bit. Not really admit to it, but at least say it. And so that's just silly, right? This has nothing to do with the price of the inflation that's causing this problem, right? And they just made this up because people like to blame corporations and they needed to say something. But it's not a real plan because it's not going to work, right? And that's capitalism. What she's talking about here, well, again...
there are a number of issues that we need to address in terms of bringing down the cost of living. It includes what we need is a new approach that I bring to the issue of affordable housing.
Okay, what's that, Kamala?
Including, for example, rent.
Rent.
And again, I bring to it my experience.
Her experience is being a renter.
What has been happening in terms of how corporations have been buying up blocks of property.
Okay, sure.
To diminish competition.
And also because it's a hard asset and they're worried about inflation.
And then rents get jacked up, and addressing that both in terms of making sure that there is a consequence and accountability for that.
Those corporations are just doing bad shit all over the place, right? Then you're a prosecutor. You're gonna go get those guys. You're not a fascist. You're not lined up with these corporations. And so the reason they're buying up property, first of all, that's capitalism, right? That's what capitalism is all about. But they're buying up property because they know that inflation's a lot worse than it is. And one of the biggest things that you can do to put your assets into something that's not going to lose value is land. Land always has value, right? They're not making any more of it, right? So buying up land is imperative. And, that's just what they're doing. You can't really stop them from doing that. But it's because of inflation they're buying up land. And she won't address the fact that all of her programs are going to increase inflation, which we'll get into in a moment here.
But also investing in people's dreams of home ownership, knowing that for too long, frankly, both administrations in both parties, Democrats and Republicans, haven't done enough to deal with the issue of housing.
Yeah, like Joe Biden didn't do enough.
And we need a new approach that includes working with the private sector. I say that as a devout public servant.
Yeah, I just love to be a public servant and serve the public. I served this guy who was twice my age, and that's how I got all my jobs.
Working with the private sector to cut through the red tape, working with home builders, working with...
There's just red tape, and she's just going to cut through it. And when you cut through it, all of a sudden all this money appears. Like if you find the red tape and you cut through it, trillions of dollars just appear out of nowhere. That's how red tape works, if you don't understand red tape. But her programs are to give people money to start up businesses and to help them buy their first home, which is going to increase inflation, which is going to increase the food because it's going to devalue the dollar more. Just to print money and throw it at the problem, that creates, more inflation and more expensive food prices. It drives up the prices of everything, right?
Developers to create tax incentives so that we can create more housing supply and bring down the price.
Let me just ask you about price gouging.
Okay, this is great because he actually kind of calls bullshit on her here in a subtle way. This is the part
Looked at your plan. You talk about going after price gougers, and I'm quoting from the plan, on essential goods during emergencies or times of crisis. I get that. How does that help, though, someone like Eric with prices that for years the grocery prices just been high?
Okay, so she came up with a legitimate plan. It's a bad one, but she has a policy there because, no one understands her policies, and her policies are very vague and very cheerleader-esque. She says these things, very simple things that don't explain how she's going to do it. She has these written plans for any policy wonk that wants to read through out bullshit that they're not going to do anyway, right? But he's saying you have this program to stop price gouging from people who, for times when people are under stress because of emergencies. And, that's, all right, sure, that's not a bad thing. I'm not against that. But it has nothing to do with this guy's question. It has nothing to do with this real problem. So Anderson Cooper asked her this question, which they usually wouldn't. Where's your substance? Where's the beef here? And this is what she does here.
Well, first of all, Anderson, as you know, and obviously CNN has been covering extensively what has been happening in the state of Georgia, North Carolina, Florida. It's a real issue.
That's not the question, though. What about this guy's food question, about his food prices?
I was Attorney General of California. I was the top law enforcement officer of the biggest state in the country. I took this issue on because it affects a lot of people. And I'm not going to apologize for the fact that
You're not apologizing.
To actually deal with accountability.
You're not apologizing for... She's not going to apologize for that, right? You're going to be apologized for being a piece of shit, lying, gaslighting MNF'er? Like, what are you going to apologize for, right? And so she's not answering the question. This is where she's failing. People are... This is the part where they're saying she got rolled here by herself.
When these, not all, in fact, most don't, but when companies are taking advantage of the desperation and the need of the American people.
So she's saying most companies don't do this because she doesn't want to alienate all companies, but saying that when they do that, that has nothing to do with any of these things that this guy's concerned about. His personal going to the grocery store, everyone going to the grocery store and going, holy fuck, this is twice as much as I used to pay. I mean, where things are doubling, like your grocery bill is like doubling. I mean, we've all experienced that, where you're like, you can't even comprehend how much things are, how expensive they are. Like it's mind-boggling. And so Anderson Cooper directed her back to the guy's question, and she's doubled down on price gouging, and now she's going to blame Donald Trump.
Well, we saw it actually during the pandemic as well, where because of supply chain issues, there was a reduction of supply, and then they would inflate the price of everyday necessities. Not to mention, by the way, again, Donald Trump should be here tonight to talk with you and answer your questions.
He's too much of a fascist for that.
He refused to come.
He refused to come because, he had fascist shit to do.
But understand that part of his plan is to put in place a national sales tax of at least 20% on everyday goods and necessities. And that, by economist estimates, independent economists,
60 Nobel laureates,
cost you as the American consumer and taxpayer an additional $4,000 a year.
I want you to meet Carol.
Not an additional, because if he put in a mandatory sales tax and got rid of income tax, then you wouldn't be paying income tax, right? You'd be paying sales tax. So 20% is a lot. Like you're putting 20% income tax. And again, that's her talking about Trump's plan that he probably isn't going to do. Trump has thrown shit up against the wall, like no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. But all the stuff that they're proposing to get rid of taxes, reduce taxes, tax breaks, and then also give people money, right? These things that they're both saying, and her, maybe a little bit more than Trump for some of these things, are things that are going to add to inflation. Both their policies and plans are going to add more to the national debt, and they're going to devalue the dollar even more. And so she didn't answer the question, which is, I don't know, like we fucked you guys when we gave all those bailouts for COVID, and that caused when we closed down the economy, that caused the inflation that we were keeping at bay, because the dollar really should have been devalued years ago, and that devalued the dollar. Now it's worth about half of it what it used to be worth, or 100% less than, it's you're paying twice as much at the grocery store at other places. And so people are buying up commodities because they know the dollar's worth shit and it's just going to get worse, whether it's me or Trump. And you guys should learn to grow some fucking food, because you're going to starve otherwise. And so, that's the first piece. This is just wonderful. Like, her failure there, because Anderson Cooper directed her back called her on her bullshit and said, what do you got for this guy? This guy asked you a question, and she said, I don't know, Donald Trump? Like, she just blames Donald Trump for everything. Let me see if I can find a meme about this. Okay, so there was a meme that was, it showed, like, what is your solution for the economy? And her answers were A, Donald Trump, B, Donald Trump, C, Donald Trump, and D, all the above. And, I can't find the meme, but whatever, you get the idea. The whole thing is that she and the Democrats have talked about nothing but Trump for years, because that was good enough for them. But they don't have real plans, because there are no real solutions, right? And so there's a few more things here. This is kind of cool, too.
Carol Nakanoff, a political science professor at Swarthmore College. She's a registered Democrat who says she's leaning toward voting for you, has yet to make her...
She looks totally like a registered Democrat leaning towards Kamala Harris.
Final decision. Carol?
Where'd you get those glasses, Carol?
Hi, Carol. Thank
Good
you.
evening. Thank you for visiting us
Thanks,
in
Carol. Thanks. Those glasses are awesome.
Delaware County, Vice President Harris. My question is this. If you could accomplish only one major policy goal that required congressional action, what would it be and why?
Well, there's not just one. I have to be honest with you, Carol.
I have to be honest with you, Carol. There's not just one, even though that was your question. Your question was, if you could only pass one, what's that? Because that would be, what's your most important agenda? But you blew it. Look at her. There's more than just one. That's not answering your question. You don't answer questions. Like, just answer the fucking question. What's the most important thing for you? Of all your agenda, just one thing. What's the one that you'd like to do first? On day one, what's the most important thing? Trump could answer this, right? He might give you 12 different answers to the same question, at different times. But at least he answered it. Like you bummed Carol out. Look at Carol's fucking face. You bummed her out. Look at poor Carol here. Like, let's go back to that moment here.
That required congressional action, what would it be and why?
Well, there's not just one. I have to be honest with you, Carol. There's
Carol.
A lot of work that needs to happen, but let's. I think that maybe part of this point that how I think about it is we've got to get past this era of politics and partisan politics, slowing down what we need to do in terms of progress in our country. And
okay, so that's not Carol's fucking question at all. You didn't answer Joe's or whatever his fucking name was question before Carol, and you're not answering Carol's question. You're incapable, of communicating with people. She asked you a question, and it isn't a got you question. She's a political science professor, and she asked you if there was going to be one thing that took Congress, congressional support. You'd have to pass a law or a bill, and you have to work with Congress, and you could get that bill passed into law. What would it be? You get something passed into law. You get something done politically. What would that issue be? And it could have been abortion. You could have just nailed it with abortion. That would have been, she's giving you, the abortion, right? Make abortion legal. That should have been the answer. In fact, maybe this Carol's a plant for you and you fucking missed it. You should have said abortion. Like, abortion's your big issue. Yeah, let's make abortion legal for all women because 60% of America want that. It was a no-brainer. That's what you should have said. And, I'm not even, I'm barely into this stuff, and I know what you should have said, right? I don't care. And so instead of saying that, you're talking about the divisiveness, which comes back to Trump, right? So look at poor Carol here. She lobbed you a fucking, a totally easy, like something you should have hit out of the park with abortion, and now you're going back into your little Trump obsession.
That means working across the aisle. I've done that before. We did it around whether it be what we were able to accomplish with the bipartisan infrastructure deal.
Yeah, you had zero to do with that. Like, you just now claiming it because you're running for president.
Or some of the work that we have done in terms of dealing with gun safety. But we've got to work across the aisle, and it is my commitment.
Yeah, that's not her question. Look at Carol. She's not digging your answer.
To work with Democrats.
Like, there's a little wall here now because you fucked this thing up. You could have gave her a legitimate answer that would have satisfied. When somebody asks you a question and you talk about something that's completely different, then you failed, right? Look at poor Carol.
With Republicans, with independents, to deal with a number of issues, whether it be what we need to do in terms of housing and creating legislation that creates incentives for that, what we need to do to reinstate the freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do.
And you could have said that. You could have said that was the first thing. That's what we got to do because it's my number one issue. It's the thing that I'm winning on and Trump's losing. Let me say abortion, but you didn't. And you missed it. You can't listen to somebody. You have to be able to listen what she wants you to say. She asked you a specific question. You could have gave her a specific answer. It's not a gotcha situation where you had to, give her a non-answer. You could have gave her an answer here. And so your people are shaking their head and say abortion, bitch.
Whether it be what we need to do to actually invest in a substantial way in the industries of the future, in American-based...
And she just gets into this stuff, where she just tries to be all poetic and, saying, meaningful stuff that mean nothing. It's just her word salad bullshit where she gets all excited about it, right? Unburdened by what has been. This is her unburdened by what has been bullshit.
Manufacturing in American-based industries where American workers and union workers...
This is just part of your fucking bullshit speech that it has nothing to do with you. They told you to say this shit, and so you are.
...have those jobs in a way that is good-paying jobs that gives people the dignity they deserve. Look, all of those areas I plan on working across the aisle and with Congress, including the issue of immigration, which we've...
Boom. Okay, that's not what you want to talk about.
...got to fix.
You got to fix. Boom. But you could have just said abortion and just said, all right, Carol, abortion, here's why. And Carol would have went home happy because she, probably cares about that. Or any number of things. But, being able to answer the question was your most important task. And you failed epically. Answering a question that was there just waiting for you to hit it out of the fucking park. Okay, so just to add to that, this woman, Carol, political science major. teacher. And we know that there are times when somebody gets elected. You know, Kamala Harris was even talking about this herself when she said, I now have a little bit of political capital. And that she was going to spend some of that political capital on some programs, right? And so she knows it, every politician knows it, that sometimes you only get one thing you can get passed through based on the momentum you have from winning the election. This is probably going to be, I mean, if Kamala Harris wins, it's going to be like a nail biter. It might take weeks to get through all the bullshit and the claims. So, I mean, it'll go back and forth, the Al Gore, George W. Bush election, that kind of thing. Like I said before, it's going to be controversial. And the president, whoever gets elected, is going to limp in. And she's no longer going to have Trump as a shield. So maybe she gets one thing done. And that's only if she has a Democratic Congress and a Democratic Senate, which she's not going to have. So this woman's question is important. If you had one thing to get done, you could only get one thing done, which is realistic, what would that be? And the obvious answer, abortion, like I said, and she failed. Like, this is how bad it is. And people who know about this, like, it took me a while to figure out abortion because I'm not, I'm not on her side. I don't even care. I'm just here to mock, right? But the people watching this knew what the right answer was. It's the same thing that Joe Biden did in the debate when he was supposed to be talking about abortion, and he brought up that story about that girl being arred and killed by an illegal immigrant, and that Trump went to the funeral, and he brought up immigration when he was supposed to be talking about abortion. It was one of his bigger fails in a night full of failure, right? And she just failed this question and answer session. There's one more here.
Let me ask you, you've talked about codifying Roe v. Wade. That would obviously require 60...
See, he's handing her the answer. That's the answer you should have gave. Like, he knows.
Votes in the Senate, a majority of the House. That's a big leap. We don't have that yet. If that's not possible to codify it in the House, what do you do?
I think we need to take a look at the filibuster, to be honest with you. But
again, she said, to be honest with you, she said the same thing to the woman. She's saying that a lot, right?
the reality of it is this. Let's talk about how we got here. When Donald Trump was president, he hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did as he intended. And now in 20 states, we have Trump abortion bans.
Yeah, so this is like your chance to talk about this. You blew it. And Anderson Cooper handed this back to you, gave you a second opportunity. But that means that you need the moderator to be so on your side that when you completely fail and mess up your lines, and you get this question that was probably handpicked by your people, I think they all were, to some extent, and like you don't have an answer for it because you can't think on your feet, you can't connect with people, and you fuck up that total answer, and then Anderson Cooper has to bring it back to you, and then you're just going to talk about Donald Trump again, right? And she goes on for a bunch of time here with that. Let's go back to this one.
Unapologetically pro-life.
She's unapologetically pro-life. She's not going to apologize to all those dead fetuses.
And will also tell you that she doesn't agree with what's been happening. I find that many people I've met...
Oh, she's talking about probably Liz Cheney. Anyway, so this is part 2 here. And the failure here, she just can't do it. Like, they knew that she wasn't capable of doing this. They hit her as long as they could, but now she's obviously going to lose. And so they're rolling her out there, and she's failing epically. Of course, Joe Biden's no help. And so, and Dougie Walsh or Dougie Fresh and whatever that Walsh guy's name is it Glenn? That's his wife, Gwen Walls. Gwen and Glenn. Tim Walsh. And he's failing as well, right? They just have nothing. They got Obama trying to reel in some votes, but they know that they're screwed here. They had $1 billion to spend, over $1 billion in a 3-month span. And, all the hatred that's there for Trump, and they couldn't produce a person that just had, some reason why they should vote for her. Like just anything. People are looking for anything, any reason not to vote for Trump. And she can't give them a reason. And that's why CNN said that she's failing epically. Okay, so let's wrap this one up here. I might cover this more and see if there's anything else. I'll look at the video. It might all be like this, but she failed. Like you could tell she underperformed. And, you know, this kind of thing happens, and it's all rigged and it's all whatever, but, you know, towards the end, one campaign sort of seems to be having their head above water, although they have just dropped this. There's an article I'll get to in the next video in which some former model says Trump groped her during an encounter facilitated by Epstein. So that's supposed to be their October surprise. Again, I don't think that's going to, you know, people who care about Epstein and that are never going to believe Trump's. We've already been through that already, even though Trump and him were good friends and Trump said really incriminating things about the guy. But, you know, they're trying to throw stuff up against the wall, and they're failing. They have to pull Gwen Walls because she's so weird, and Tim Walz is just failing, and Kamala can't do what she needs to do, and, you know, people are, like, they flirted with the idea of voting with her, but it seems like they're giving this thing to Trump, and, you know, everyone kind of knows it, and they're preparing for that, right? That inevitability for this fascist Trump. You know, anyways, only spirituality will save this world. Its power model definitely points to the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.